This is going to be very therapeutic for me. In many ways, Metal Gear Solid is what made me excited to create videos in the first place. Before Delta's announcement, I was consumed by speculation over MGS's future, especially remakes. Then, Delta's reveal sent me spiraling into another rabbit hole of concerns and hopes for what could be MGS's long-awaited return to the mainstream. 10 years to the day after Phantom Pain graced our cynical, stealth-starved hands, Metal Gear Solid Delta released, and I've completed 2 playthroughs. I have endless thoughts, many of which I'll probably forget to put into the video. I've got a lot of praise, some major problems, and a few opinions about the strange, misplaced discourse surrounding the game. I like to get the negatives out of the way, so I'll address those first, but before I do that, I just want to state for the record that MGS3 is not my favourite Metal Gear game, like it is for most. I absolutely adore it, of course, but it's only my 3rd all-time favourite. I mention this because I'm slightly more forgiving to any changes made, whereas I would be nitpicking every single pixel if my number 1 favourite was getting the remake treatment. That being said, I was still paying very close attention to make sure that the most important fundamentals were maintained. Alright, on to the problems. The biggest one being price. There is zero reason this game should be full price. There is a lot of content, yes. They brought back features that don't exist in the HD collection version of Snake Eater, but these features are 20 years old. Plus, they don't have Metal Gear Online, which was included in Subsistence. The newly released Fox Hunt mode doesn't count. It's not a substitute for MGO, although I do appreciate the attempt at creating something unique. If Bethesda, one of the biggest pillars of greed in this industry, could resist pricing the Oblivion remaster at full price, so could Konami. This is not a reimagining and/or expansion of the original like the Silent Hill 2 remake. This is just a new way to play a classic with a slick coat of paint and some much needed quality of life features. Nothing about that screams €80 or $80 to me. Yes, us foolish fanboys have paid a lot for a lot less, but at least Ground Zeroes was a brand new experience. And besides, I got my money's worth because I put 100 hours into that. I'm not validating that price point, I'm just drawing a comparison. The point is, remakes, especially ones that are this loyal to the original, should not be full price games. The second unacceptable issue is performance. A lot of people blame Unreal Engine 5, and I was definitely of that camp at one point. But the more I think of it, that's like blaming Adobe software for a rushed Photoshop job. Adobe Photoshop gives you a lot of powerful tools to create intricate and beautiful works, but if a person lacks patience, and instead uses these powerful tools to bypass the more advanced learning processes, you get many mistakes and shortcuts that take a long time to patch up afterwards. Of course, this is a very broad comparison, but the point is, Unreal Engine 5 has many tools to do a lot of the heavy lifting automatically, and I believe that's most likely the reason that optimization has declined with these UE5 releases. People have either become too complacent, too lazy, or too time constrained to give these classics the justice they deserve. Some of these issues include poor frame rate, particularly towards the 3rd act of the game, and that weird, frustrating shimmering effect that has become so distracting in UE5 releases lately. I started noticing this effect ever since my playthrough of Still Wasted Deep on PC. It's difficult to appreciate realistic hair follicles when Snake's beard comes alive like symbiote. These issues have been addressed since, but I'm not excusing their existence at launch, let alone how they persisted after the first major patch. It's inexcusable, especially when paired with the pricing. Aside from all of that, I didn't have any other major issues with Delta. I did have one smaller problem though. You see, I'm very grateful for that legacy filter, which is what I ended up using exclusively for my first playthrough, but there were certain locations that looked more appealing in the new style. I just wish there was some kind of compromise filter, where you could maintain the 60s movie aesthetic from Legacy, while at the same time make it clean and appealing to look at. And before you say anything, yes, I'm aware how nitpicky that minor quibble is. Either way, having the Legacy filter in the game at all shows great respect for the original, which is a scarce luxury in today's reign of remakes. And with that, let's transition to the positives. The respect for the original can be felt in many more aspects of the game, contrary to what the vocal minority would have you believe. Or maybe it's the consensus now, I'm not sure. What I am sure of is that I can't agree with them. The team behind this consists of multiple veterans who brought the original to life, and even without that information, it's abundantly clear that this isn't a cash grab, despite being overpriced. Starting with the title, the game does not fall into the same trap as other remakes by stealing the name of the original. It's not called Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It doesn't seek to replace, merely to coincide, while offering a new way to experience a timeless story. This would have been a very different video had they not brought Snake Eater back in the Master Collection, while promoting the remake as the new and improved Snake Eater. Instead, the original Snake Eater was not only brought back, it was future-proofed, with ports to modern consoles and especially PC. That may not seem like much, but think of the many franchises that have yet to leave one generation, long forgotten and disregarded by their IP holders. On the topic of bringing things back from the past, can we all just take a moment to enjoy the glorious return of the Metal Gear Solid theme? If you don't know, sometime after Portable Ops was released, there was a plagiarism debacle concerning the similarity between MGS's main theme, particularly the MGS1 version, and a song called Winter Road by Georgy Svirdov. Sorry if I'm butchering the name. It was a whole thing, and I'm not well versed in music, so I'd only butcher the details if I tried to explain. The point is, either Konami or Kojima dropped the theme after the plagiarism allegations gained traction, and that's why we didn't get an MGS4 version of the theme, which was a damn shame. Obviously, I don't condone plagiarism, especially in the music industry, but a part of me wishes Konami had just swallowed their pride and paid royalties to that artist, while continuing to evolve the main theme, because it's one of the best out there. On the other hand, that would mean we would exist in a world where the Peace Walker theme doesn't exist. Damn, maybe it was for the best that things played out the way they did. Speaking of playing, let's segue to the gameplay. The first thing that became immediately apparent to me, once the intro concluded, was that they made X the action button instead of the crouch/prone button, which is a crime against humanity as far as I'm concerned. I've been pressing X to prone since I was a fetus in 1998. Fortunately, you can swap the button binds, but that was a quick fix. Now when the gameplay really began, one thing became clear. Oh yeah, they just made MGS3's gameplay the way I always hoped it would be. And all it required was just a few quality of life improvements. I've always had a couple of issues with MGS3's controls. Not that I was bad at them. I mastered them after a while just like any other MGS fan. No, it was more the idea that the gameplay of MGS3's world had evolved so far beyond the actual control of Snake himself. Let me explain. Recently, a friend of the channel and fellow MGS aficionado, Player Alert, made a video about MGS2's tanker level. And there he made a statement, that I'm going to paraphrase, that the fluidity of controlling Snake in MGS2 was unmatched until MGS5. I had to sit back and really think about that sentiment for a second, but then I quickly came to the realization that I 100% agree. So I then tried to figure out why I feel that way, by booting up MGS2's tanker level for myself. This is my conclusion, and it's okay if you don't agree. MGS3's mountainous depth in gameplay comes mostly from the environmental mechanics and detail. The endless ways you can tackle an outpost or jungle patrols is enough to make modern games blush. It's still mind-blowing to this day. However, it feels like everything about the game, from the story, cinematic presentation, character work, writing, environment, world building, set pieces, they all took 2 steps forward, except for the control of Snake, which felt like it only took 1. Yes, the addition of CQC was a game changer, but I've always felt like Snake's control was needlessly limiting. But Detonale, sir, didn't you just say MGS2 Snake's controls were fluid? MGS3 is an evolution of that, isn't it? Yes, but the difference is, MGS2's environment felt meticulously crafted to match the evolution of Snake's gameplay, so the ratio felt 1-to-1, hence why everything flowed so smoothly once the gameplay clicked. Whereas MGS3, the ratio between controlling Snake and the environmental mechanics feels like 1-to-2. Snake still needed multiple button presses to do simple actions, which became tedious, especially in the jungle areas and boss fights. Hell, even the camera was limiting in the original release of Snake Eater. If you don't know, the first edition of Snake Eater on the PS2 did not have the 3D camera. It was only with MGS3 Subsistence that the 3D camera was introduced, even though the game felt designed to have that originally. It's hard to imagine the game without it, isn't it? On the topic of mechanics that should have been there in the first place, crouch walking. The game felt ready for it, but they stuck to the MGS2 design of crouch in place, then pushed the analog to go prone. It just felt like a leftover of an archaic design that didn't need to be there. I guess I wasn't the only one who felt that way, because in the DS version of Snake Eater, they added crouch walking. And would you look at that? It didn't break the game, only enhanced the experience while adding to the immersion. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Delta rectified these complaints of mine. Being able to crouch walk and also adding the ability to move while aiming removes the tedium and finally levels the ratio 1-to-1. It doesn't compare to Phantom Pain's gameplay, but it never needed to. Delta's goal was to maximize the potential already present in OG Snake Eater, while not compromising its design philosophy for the sake of trivial convenience. And I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you other than my belief that they succeeded tenfold. Adding those mechanics, introducing a quick codec plus camo system, and greatly reducing the amount of time spent in the survival viewer was exactly what I needed from this remake. Accomplishing that balance without breaking the game is a win in my book. It was fun having to relearn how to master headshots now that they introduced bullet drop to compensate for the ease of aim. And if I'm feeling nostalgic for the old ways or I get bored of the new style, I just switch to legacy mode and off I go. Your experience can feel very unique and customized, and that doesn't get as much praise as it should. One of my favorite YouTubers, Super Bunny Hop, released an excellent video about his experience playing through Delta in black and white. I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's very insightful, delving into how Delta evokes some of that early black and white cinema, unintentionally or intentionally. To get back to my point, Delta made me appreciate Snake Eater's gameplay so much more than I used to. But it didn't just make me appreciate the gameplay more, it elevated the cinematics too. Before I talk about the cutscenes, I'll quickly address the character models. To put it bluntly, there isn't a single character model that feels off to me, unlike the pachinko models which felt very off. Bringing PS2 characters up to photorealism is like walking on eggshells. Everyone has their own narrow view of how they should look, while struggling to understand the difference between intended character design and technical limitations. Delta brought these characters to life in ways I never expected. It wasn't just a fancy coat of paint. The faces are much more expressive now. It's not The Last of Us level of facial capture, but adding these subtle facial expressions gives so much weight to the cutscenes that were already heavy. Kojima was years ahead of the curve with motion capture performance and cinematic presentation. So much so that Delta only had to update the visuals, add a few facial expressions, change nothing else, and the results speak for themselves. You're seeing the skeleton of a 2004 game, looking as good, if not better, than 90% of AAA games at the time of 2026. What better way to respect OG Snake Eater than to remind the world why Snake Eater set the bar so high all the way back in 2004? Before the game released, they drew attention to the fact that they were creating the eye expressions from scratch, making them lifelike. I thought this was just marketing speak, gimmicky PR nonsense that I hear all the time. Like how other games promote really small mechanics such as, oh look, Vish AI moves out of the way when you swim near them, or the weather effects completely transform the battlefield. But no, I found myself drawn to the characters' eyes in the game. The amount of nuance present in the eyes during critical moments of the story is an unexpected surprise. I was sucked into the emotions of the scene without even realizing. And it helps that the lip syncing matches the English voices now. Oh, and before I forget a very important thought I had just the other day. I was thinking about Phantom Pain's one-shot camera style cutscenes and how impressive it was to pull off. But I was also looking back at the cutscenes of OG Snake Eater, and I realized so much was lost in the pursuit of that one-shot style. Delta reminded me just how fantastic the presentation is when it's not confined to a no-cut rule. The camera is brimming with character here. Just look at Ocelot's introductory scene. I appreciate the technical achievement of MGS5's cutscene style, but it was really nice to return to the OG style and be reminded why Snake Eater's cutscenes are the most well-made in the series. They're kinetic, they're energetic, they're goofy, and they're a masterclass in visual storytelling without any of the characters having to say a single word. You can watch all the cutscenes muted and know exactly what all the characters are feeling in any scene. And now with Delta, you get even more insight with little but powerful additions, bringing to life what was constrained by PS2 hardware, while leaving the artistic expression preserved and untouched. To some, that might make it too safe. They could have done what other studios do. They could have handed Snake Eater off to interns needing a nice bump in their CV, or some contract work, or handed it off to a studio that felt like it needed to make their own mark, changing things willy-nilly to suit their own modern expression. But no, they handed the task to a veteran of the OG, who understood that nothing about Snake Eater needed to be changed or removed, just enhance everything that was already there, because what was already there was near perfection. This isn't remake slop nor a cash grab. For all intents and purposes, this is Snake Eater, and I'll continue to play both versions with a newfound appreciation. I wanted to address some things before I end the video. I've seen a few comments stating a boycott Delta because of the lack of Kojima involvement, which baffles me because you can argue that Kojima is the most involved, considering Delta is built on 90% of the work already set by him. Every Kojimaism, no matter how strange, wacky, or excellent, is preserved in all of its glory here. Besides, the last time Kojima was involved with a Metal Gear remake, it was Twin Snakes, to which he told the studio Silicon Knights to not emulate MGS1 and to do their own thing. So, yeah. I don't like to put words in Kojima's mouth like some fans do, but it's clear that that man is always looking forward and creating new things. He's not interested in revisiting what he's made, or what others have done. He's interested in his next unique idea to create, and I'm always interested in seeing them. He's a visionary, and I respect the hell out of that mindset. What would his involvement in an MGS Delta actually contribute, if not to change anything? No. We got the best possible scenario when it came to a beloved classic being dug up. Don't believe me? Compare it to the mountains of actual slop remakes. Remove content, butchered art design, and the biggest offender, replacing the originals on the stores. Alright, now that I've got that off my chest, I'll say this. I may think Delta is a pretty good remake, but it was one of the easier remakes to choose in the series. If they are daring enough to touch MGS2, and especially MGS1, they're going to be faced with a lot more scrutiny and many more challenges. Challenges I'm not going to get into here because I'm already a broken record. I also didn't really get to touch on the Guy Savage side mode, remade by Platinum Games, which I had a lot of fun with. I kind of want to see a full game of that. Maybe another day. For now, I'll end things here. Thank you for making it this far. I avoided talking about Delta for so long because I knew it would be a daunting video to make. I have so many thoughts about this game, some of which I still couldn't fit into the video. But now I feel a big weight off my shoulders. Anyway, you take it easy. Until next time.